Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live on inclusive leadership and fair workplace practices. I'm Rita Choi, founder of Asia HRM, and I'm delighted to have you with in a world shaped by rapid change and rising expectations from employees and society. Inclusion is no longer a nice to have. It is a leadership capability, a risk management strategy, and a brand differentiator. Today, we are going to explore what fair workplace practices really look like in action and how leaders can build cultures that are human, future ready, and deeply connected. I'm honored to be joined by two incredible leaders today, Ms. Olivia Wong and Ms. Sandari Mutaju, yeah, who brings decades of experience in culture building, social responsibility, and leadership transformation. You are a powerful and practical and inspiring conversation. Thank you for lunch with us. Before I dive in, I would love to give a brief introduction of these two wonderful, incredible leaders. Ms. Olivia Wong is the General Manager for Environmental and Social Responsibility at MTR Corporation Limited Hong Kong, and is responsible for formulating and implementing clear and effective strategies in achieving MTR's social and environmental objectives and in championing the corporation's ESG efforts and commitments. Prior to joining MTR, Olivia spent her entire professional career with the Swire Group in different business units, including Cathay Pacific and Swire Properties. Her last role in John Swire and Sons Hong Kong Limited was the group head of diversity and inclusion, a role that was created in August 2018. She developed a coherent diversity strategy and aligned D&I initiatives across the Swire Group. Wow, Olivia is Indian expert in D&I. How about our another speaker? Sandari is a leadership consultant and business storytelling coach for over 30 years of experience across finance, operations, banking, and entrepreneurship. Having worked in Hong Kong, the Middle East, and India, she brings deep insight into organizational dynamics and uses storytelling as a strategic tool to drive culture and leadership transformation. Her work has been featured in Forbes, Live Mint, and international podcasts, and she is widely recognized for her advocacy in women's empowerment and leadership development. Okay, so without further ado, before we start the panel discussion, I would love to welcome everybody again to the live session. And I would also love to hear on where you are from. Just say hi to us. And just feel free to put your questions or even your comments in the question box. Your comments will be acknowledged and your questions will be answered. Are you all ready for it?
Absolutely.
Great. Great, thank you. So let me start with the first question for both leaders. The topic for today is inclusive leadership. So what does inclusive leadership mean to you? Anyone? Olivia or Sandari? Anyone would like to start?
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Rita, for the space, for us to be part of this conversation. It's a great series that you're working on, watch some of them online. So it's really good to be part of it, and especially thrilled to be part of this with Olivia, who I know in Hong Kong for the work that she's been doing over the years. I think I don't want to get definitional on the word, but for me, it simply means that it's a person who appreciates everybody's contribution, somebody who acknowledges everybody's inherent worth without getting judgmental, and uh, and hence inspires innovation by involving. Sometimes it's people at risk from being excluded from the society as well. So two dimensions. One is about acknowledging everybody's inherent worth, and the second part is the human rights based approach in a way of and then being aware of this interconnection.
Great.
Very nice.
So there you pretty much given all the definitions already. I think just to add on top of that, I think from our perspective, I mean, especially working in a corporate, that aside in terms of inclusive leadership, bringing in diverse thinking, people that are of different opinions, different background, and welcoming those ideas and inspiring, encouraging them. But at the same time, also making it transparently clear that it is actually okay for all of us to respectfully agree to disagree, because that's the reality. When you're working in a corporate, you're bringing in people that are coming from different background and different thinkings. We're all going to come and bring something of our own experience. And while I think it's of course important to encourage people to speak up and share ideas, but I think in order to be truly inclusive, is also to have everybody to be really feel safe and understand that it's also okay to disagree. It's perfectly fine, because we are human beings and we're supposed to, as long as we're able to disagree respectfully and share why we feel certain ways. And I think that is on top of everything that was said. I think this is also an important element in terms of what inclusive leadership really looks like.
Wow, I love that. A lot of great ideas. It's okay to disagree, right? We speak up and also feel safe to express our ideas. I love that. And also acknowledge people's contribution, aware of the interactions. Wow, a lot of great ideas. Thank you so much. So let's move on to the next question. Okay. How does inclusive leadership influence an organization's ability to innovate? And what are the consequences when certain voices are excluded from decision making? Sundari, you'd like to speak on that?
Yeah, sure. It's a favorite. I mean, this whole topic is something that really calls out. So really grateful for you to put this together. Innovation requires diversity of perspectives. I remember reading about Deloitte's research findings shows that diversity of thinking leads to 87% better decisions and 19% more innovation income and revenue. And a few months ago, and I was leading a discussion at the Hong Kong Inclusion Summit on business driven inclusion strategies. Olivia was running a parallel discussion. I missed that because I was running this session. Some of the aspects that we highlighted there were there is a market and a talent imperative. The global workforce and the customer base is more diverse than ever before. So there is that whole concept of war on talent. There's a generational perspectives have shifted. So 76% of the job seekers prioritize inclusion, and 80% of the people prefer diverse and inclusion brands. So organizations that treat inclusion as a strategic priority, not just as a compliance requirement, constantly outperform the competitors on financial metrics, innovation, talent retention. So it's not just a right thing to do, it's a smart thing to do. And I just want to share an example about age diverse teams from the generational side, because today we are working with 5 different generations at the workplace. So, how do you keep everybody engaged, and how do you ensure that all their contributions are valuable, that they bring together? And I saw a great example of this at Open Sustainability Technology Lab at Michigan Technology University, where a multi generational team worked together and they developed the first low cost open source metal 3D printer. So, to develop this product, they needed the technical skills of Gen X, they needed the software wizardry of millennials, and the experience resourcefulness of what is referred to as boomer researchers. So, once when a young team member was turning to Amazon to order urgently required equipment, a older colleague intervened and said, I can build it quickly from spare parts, even faster than Amazon can deliver it. So by combining this, they developed this 3D printer in aluminum and steel at a much lower cost. And I think it's things like this which bring the synergies and of diversity of perspectives, thinking, age, whatever you want to call it, that leads to bigger and better innovation.
I really love your example of the company, right? Having no issues with age diversity. Because in my last year's survey about the top HR challenges faced by the leaders in Hong Kong, age diversity, meaning that how to deal with Gen Z, is really something at the top of their agenda. A lot of company actually has issues in understanding Gen Z, and also they come up some strategies to manage the issues. So when you quote an example of a company who are able to make use of age diversity to invent something which is low cost and also first the CD printer, actually I'm very impressed. Yeah. So Olivia, anything to add on?
Um, no, I mean, I think that is exactly a good example, like, whether it's age diversity or whether it potentially gender or different ethnic background, different upbringing. I think, ultimately it kind of goes back to the perspective that diversity, I know is a cliche, but it is true. Diversity leads to innovations and creativities. When you have groupthink, when everybody comes in a group and they are coming from similar backgrounds, it's very difficult to break out of that silo. And so, yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a wonderful example. I think intergeneration definitely is going to be something that we're probably going to have to be looking and talking about for probably quite a few years to come, as people living longer and healthier, and then the next generations also coming through. This is simply a reality that we're all going to have to deal with.
Very true, very true. Especially due to longevity, right? People are getting healthier.
No, so we have the longevity thing. So we have the old so-called traditionalists, the older people getting onto boards, doing consulting roles. But equally, we have the latest generation, which is like 13-year-olds starting podcasts, starting their
Mm,
own startups, and all of that. Um,
yeah.
and I do think this generational diversity has always been there. I grew up in a three-generation household, my grandma,
Mm.
mom, and me. And I thought we were all like very different. And at some level, my grandma would support us for some of the new things that we wanted to do than my mother. And so this has been a continuous thing. So really approaching it as a more human issue that happens, rather than I'm not keen. I use some of the labels. I'm not keen on the labels. It's more for marketing. It's easy to create a label and market for people, but it's more like who's the person that we're taking with. Older person could be tech savvy, a younger person could be shy on that, so there's no stereotyping there.
Yeah, very true, very true. For me, I think, say for example, I just take one of the we have different type of diversities, right? Age diversity. If we feel positive about it, something that it's good to do with people of different generations. We can learn from them. I think the mindset has been changed, and you feel more like it and then accept it, and then at the end of the day, you can really whip the benefits of it. So for me, it's more about the mindset. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for a lot of insights. And the next one, what people related risks arise when workforce practices are not fair or inclusive? And how can leadership proactively mitigate them? Olivia, you would like to speak on this one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's kind of, I think anything, whether, it's not only around, in terms of inclusion. I think any organizations, that you kind of look at it is that, their HR practice in place in terms of how they work with their people, in terms of their ability to support their staff so they make sure that they actually can fulfill their full potential. And then providing them and understanding the flexibility that's required in the workplace. I think all of this are extremely important, and I think these should be basic practices that a good organization, or actually any organization, you really think about it, should have. And so, naturally, if you kind of think about, and I think that often, and this is a conversations that we tend to have quite a bit, whether it was in my previous organizations or even now, is that we think, when we talk about flexible working, or we think about how do we include people, the first thing we think is, oh, we are doing this for those that like the special need people, or like the mothers, or that's why we have flexible working, or we do this because we make the office more accommodating, for people that, because, yes, we're trying to bring in people of diverse background or maybe with different abilities. And I would challenge that, is that no, do this because everybody needs it. Who is to say that, when you have flexible working, in terms of understanding, the different needs of parents or family, that it's only the woman that's required? Who is to say that men do not want to actually take on that also the same responsibilities or wanting to share that responsibility with their spouse, to look after their children? Who is to say that men do not actually want to also have the responsibilities to look after their parents or the aging parents? So I think, and then so when we kind of start to think about these kind of workplace practices, whether, is it really for a specific special group? It's not. It is for everybody. And it is really in terms of how do you explain that and how do you ensure that ultimately people that need those flexibilities are encouraged to take on those opportunities or to really fully utilize those flexibilities. So I think that's really important. So I think, to answer that kind of the questions firstly is that, when we think about, workplace practices, is when we're thinking about it, while maybe originally the idea is that you may want to design it for maybe, there's a group of people that have a specific needs, but actually if you kind of really look forward to it, is that it really is for everybody, and it kind of helps and anyone that actually comes into your workplace. And I think we go back to, I know we talked a bit about age, and again, I always kind of find it funny when people think, we don't really have anybody that needs to, we happen to don't have anybody that needs to work and that has come into work has a wheelchair, so maybe they kind of not think about the accessibility of the office. And I would challenge you is that how many of us play sports? And how many of us, probably not a lot, but there's a few of us, and me included, that have done something pretty silly and kind of need to come in on a crutches, and then so you start to think, wow, the staircase is pretty challenging, or I really need a easier way to access the office, or an automatic door that can open, so then I don't have to fumble and drop my crutches and trying to open the door. So I think some of these things, as we really start to think about, developing the sort of workplace practice, while, maybe the original thinking is looking at a particular group, is to really think about ultimately you are actually benefiting your entire organizations and every individuals, that coming to work for you as they go through different stages of their life.
Olivia, I really love your challenge, right? You challenge this kind of workplace practices, whether it's only for a specific group of people. In the end, actually, is beneficial for everyone in the office. I really love your challenge. So, Sundari, anything to add on?
Yeah, I mean, there is that whole financial and litigation risk when we talk about from a risk perspective. But I think for organizations, there's also what is irrelevance risk. You can become irrelevant to the work that you're doing because people will not want to join you for this purpose. Then you're losing talent. And I think some of these can be dealt with the nudges. So if you think of a airport as a working place, and I saw this beautiful example for nudges at the Austin airport in Texas. They had normally when we have the changing rooms for the kids, so they will normally have the men's toilet, they'll have the women's toilet, and they'll have another symbol of women with the baby for the for changing. But Austin had a men's toilet and a board for man with the baby, and a women's toilet with a board for women with the baby. So nobody needs to think, where do I go? If I'm a father who's traveling with a kid, I don't need to think where do I go? Can I just use that changing room and things like that? So I think workplaces, by simple things, and I've seen some of these great signages in offices here. I've not been to the MTR office, Olivia, but I've seen it at Society General office, the inclusive signature signs, Bank of America office, EY, and things like that. And I think these are all small ways of showing that it might look very small, it's just a board. But makes a big difference when you walk into an office and see it. I notice this all the time into places that I work with, organizations that I work with. So I think this is really important. So organizations have the thing of being relevant in today's time. and they can do it in very simple ways.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I agree with the nudges. I think that makes sense. We have something where because all of our is the MTR, like, in most of the floors, we'll have kind of the nursing room, just like, for the mom. But I think one of the things that as we move across to our side, like, we kind of like, we're now next door to the headquarters, right? And so one of the things when we were talking about this kind of room, we said, yeah, it's really important that we make sure that we have a room where, the nursing mothers needs to express their milk, everything is there. But we also say, but when it is not in use, actually, who else may potentially be able to use the space is often we have colleagues that, for example, may need that quiet space. They may have certain sensory challenges where they feel that they just need that 5 minutes, 10 minutes where there's no window, no anything, but I just need to be in there. And so then the way that we put that room together is, not only, so we don't call it kind of the nursing room, we kind of call it, the quiet room, but we said we give priority to nursing mother because, the fridge is in there as well. But then ultimately it is a space where we recognize that it can be for other people that are in need, and is, like you said, is that little nudge. When you change that name instead of nursing room just to be a quiet room, then it changes that concept that is not only for one purpose, because you actually can have things that are multi-purpose.
Wow, Olivia, I can't agree with you more about the example of nursing room, right? I can remember that in my previous company, we also set up nursing room for those who need to to pump the milk for the newborns and so on, right? But at the same time, we also reserve this room for someone who really need to have quiet time. And you know what is the beneficial party for that room? You never thought it's the cleaner in our company, because they really want to have a quiet room for them to take a break for 5 or 10 minutes. So I think the purpose of this room is just a multi-purpose, not really just for nursing, but also for the use of other people as well. Wow, we love your example of that. Okay, so let's pause for a while to see if we have any questions from the viewers today. We have a lot of hello from Pakistan, and we have this Lorraine, such a privilege to join this session. And then we have Sovinara, hello from Cambodia. Thanks for the amazing session. Okay, there's a question here. People talk a lot about inclusive leadership, but what does it actually look like in everyday decisions? Let me show you here. What people, let me start this one. Let me see. Okay, so people talk a lot about inclusive leadership, but what does it actually look like in everyday decisions? Anyone would like to take this question?
I can give it a shot first. So I think a lot of it is really in terms of when we talk about inclusive leadership. So as a leader, and when I say leader, it doesn't have to be the person way on the top. It's anybody that actually has, whether it's even they have people management responsibility, but even, if you're working in a committee and, you kind of head that committees and you're working with your peers, that is when you are able to, when you're working amongst people, I think that's really important. And I think part of what that everyday decisions look like is to kind of think about the people that you are working with in terms of the team. Is, are you providing that sort of opportunities to allow, because we talked earlier around allowing different viewpoints to come through, and really kind of so if you are that leader in that particular group and that you're going to have a makeup of people that are from different in terms of different personalities. So, I tend to do that when I run a meeting, is that, not all of us are extroverts, and we don't want all extroverts in a team. And I have many introverts in my team as well. And one of the things that's really important is that, we always make an effort is to get the introverts to talk first. And that's really important. That's basic decisions. And it's not it's not rocket science. Like, you don't actually have to, like, it's not like you have to make any extra effort. The only extra effort you have to make is to be able to understand who are in your team and identify those that tend to be introverts. And introverts, they're brilliant thinker as well. It's just that they don't blurt out the first thing. I blurt out the first thing I think about because I know I'm an extrovert, but then then I realize I regret that later. But I think introvert generally tends to wait a bit, and you think that, oh, they're not thinking or they don't have any ideas. No, they're brilliant ideas, but you just have to give them space and time. And so those are the kind of decisions you naturally can make every single day as someone that's working with other team members, is to allow that opportunity to really practice what we preach, in terms of getting those diverse ideas out there, allowing people to feel safe so then they can speak up, is to give them that opportunity. So yeah, that would be one thing that I can think that, you can do every single day, when you come into the office. That's what you should be doing.
Wow, that introvert speak first. Very nice. Practice what we preach. So Daria, anything to add on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think meetings are one place where you can really set the change. And today with AI tools, you can really also reflect on what you're doing. So having a range of ways in which people can participate. It could be unmuting and talking. It could be typing on the chat. It could be doing an anonymous chat and things like that. And I think the tools actually help us also become self-aware. Now, during the meeting, sometimes, it's a half-hour meeting. It's all hands in. Everybody's talking. You may not realize it, but post-meeting, if you go back and analyze, there are tools which actually say what percentage of the conversation who has spoken. So you can actually look at those and say whether, as a person who initiated the meeting, and we can call them leaders, we can call them meeting organizers, whatever the title is, did we really create that space where everybody got a voice? How have we tracked it? So not being shy to use some of these tools. So we have the data with us, so really utilizing those to drive better decisions. I feel those are some of the things that we can really harness. And we have the technology, we have the tools, instead of shying, calling AI jobs and all of that. Let's be the person human who's driving it, using the tools for us to be more human at work. And then I think that's a wonderful way to showcase inclusive leadership right there in everyday things that we do.
Very nice. Everyone gets a voice. Okay, let's move on. Okay, from your perspective, what does a psychologically safe workplace look like, and why is it essential for fair and effective leadership? Sundari, you like to speak on this one? You like to take this one?
Where do we start and where do we end? And I always think that, while it's psychological safety, it's a really small word for something which is really huge and significant for all of us. So once we've created this diversity of thought and thinking, we need to create the space for people to be heard and have that sense of belonging. And I think Amy Edmondson has done a lot of work around it. So I'm not going to try defining what it means, but I'm actually going to give an anti-example for us to share. So Clairol, which is this brand, Herbal Essence, it's a hair products brand in the US. So Steve Sadov was the CEO around, I think, 1991, around that time. So just to also say that this is not a new word in that sense. The company at the time had been shell-shocked by a significant decline in sales volume. So when he took over, he just remembers saying that I went to every creative person who did all the packaging and the creative development and all of that. And I asked them, why aren't we doing anything creative anymore? And one of the persons that he spoke to actually opened his drawer in his desk and started showing all the wonderful work that he had done. And nobody was asking for it. It was a culture where people just kept their head down. So Steve realized that his first job as a leader was to create an environment that allowed innovation and creativity, made it okay for people to fail and hence share. And Google did a similar kind of a thing. They did this project Aristotle, I think in 2012, 2016, where they said, what is a key to a high performance team? Why are some teams high performing and why are not others? How are they able to work together? And they found that psychological safety is the most critical factor. They said that if you have to take 5 key things for team effectiveness, psychological safety right on top, dependability, the structure and clarity, meaning and impact. So right on top was psychological safety. And I think that's where the work that leaders do in creating the space is really important. I remember listening to Ajay Banga, who's the CEO of MasterCard, was saying that psychological safety doesn't come because you wave a magic wand. It comes through hard work, it comes through sharing, and it comes through cross fertilization of people and ideas. So it ties up beautifully back to having that diverse group, diversity of perspectives, being open to questions, listening and asking questions, and actually, just like in Steve Sadov's case, getting out of your office.
Very nice. Yeah, getting diverse view, right? Okay, so Olivia, anything to add on this one?
No, I mean, I think I agree with everything Sundari just actually kind of say. We actually did a little workshop and survey around psychological safety just to see whether, firstly, whether our colleagues understand what this means, and then what would be their expectations. I mean, but I mean, we did it in a way. We always said, like, when we sometimes when we do these kind of surveys, we try to use it as an opportunity, as a teaching opportunity as well. So then, we would actually kind of give them a lot of explanations and definitions, and hanging all the different posters before we ask them to survey. So we figured if people are really interested, they will at least kind of read through those definitions. But we do find that at the end of the day, I think I agree with what Sundari said, is having that ability to bring in those kind of diverse views, and just allowing people to be able to speak up freely, and I think that's important, because again, it goes back to the whole point is diversity do bring in innovation and creativity, but if you have a diverse team that is not willing to speak up, it makes no difference, and you might as well have kind of a group think, at least they will be willing to talk to each other. So
very true, very true. Okay, it seems that we have quite a number of questions from the attendees today. Okay, the first one: how can right meetings and engagements help in inclusive workplace? How can right meetings and engagement help in inclusive workplace? Anyone would like to take this one?
I think we alluded to it in the previous discussions about the meetings.
Right.
Thanks, Nikhil. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that question. I think in terms of when you talk about engagements, I don't know if you're relating to engagement surveys, that kind of engagements, or just the contact and engagements. And I think Olivia mentioned it as well, not just having introverts speaking first, the leaders speaking last. That's also a great way, because once you've said something as a leader, there is that positional power that you hold. There is a tendency to go for that group thing and say yes, but hold your opinions till the end and let the others speak first. That could be one way.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Leaders speak last. Okay. Olivia, anything to add on this one?
Yeah. And I guess part of it as well is, I know that sometimes, and this is where it's a trap that I do sometimes fall in, is like, we want to be inclusive. So we want everybody to be included. So we want people to get involved. The reality is not everybody needs to be in every meeting. So let's just be really mindful, especially when you're trying to set a meeting, think about who really needs to be there. The others, it's like, you can always tell them, hey, by the way, we had a meeting, this is what's going on. But during a meeting, if they don't need to be there, don't have them in there. And because I think, again, kind of it is kind of funny, but if you do have a really kind of inclusive environment where people feel comfortable, they don't feel like just because they haven't been invited to a meeting that they're being excluded. They realize that, thank God you did not invite me to a meeting, because you're not wasting my time. So I think that could also be one about right meetings is, not everybody needs to be there.
Very true. Thank you so much. And then another question here: not everybody needs to be in a meeting. That's very true. Don't overuse this inclusive, the word inclusive there. Okay, another question from Noreen, right? What matrix could we use to measure whether our workplace is becoming more fair and inclusive over time? Okay, anyone would like to take this one?
I can start and give it a shot first. So then
Yeah.
we basically do. So we run two types of survey. We actually did a diversity and inclusion survey. So that very specific, looking at the different demographics, and then looking at, very like specific inclusive questions, and which actually, some of the consultancy firms out there, actually do that, and so that they specifically measure inclusion within and the equity within organizations. And then what we also do is that we cross-check with our engagement survey, which hopefully in the long run, we hope that we're able to bring a lot of the diversity questions and diversity inclusion questions into the engagement survey as well. So then the engagement survey purpose then is to also track, the concept of engagement in terms of our colleagues. And so the argument is that the more, in a workplace where everybody feels that their voice is being heard, they feel that they're being included in the process, they can be themselves, then they naturally are more engaged. So that would be the argument. But then at the same time, you also want to bring in the different demographic, because not all things are created equal. While maybe your overall survey, data, the metrics will tell you that your overall engagements and overall sense of diversity inclusion is quite strong within organizations, different demographic groups will feel differently. And this is where the concept of matrix is, where you can use that outcome to explain and say, okay, so maybe men tends to feel that their voice are being heard more often than women, for example. If that's what the score comes out to say, because you're able to bring it down by demographic, then you know that, okay, then what are the things that we need to do maybe specifically for women? Do we need to create a network for them, or do we want to create more opportunities where they can go on a specific leadership program where maybe it's just them, so then they can share the challenges they have? So I think those are the kind of things like you can use potentially both your D&I survey and your engagement survey, and cross-check that and look at the measurements, but then also make sure that you break it down by demographic, so you know exactly what the potential issues is coming from a different demographic, and then you figure out what it is that you need to do then to target that specific group.
Very nice survey, and also, the feeling from each of the group. Sundari, anything to add on?
No, I mean, Olivia has so much of hands-on experience of actually doing it for one of the largest employers, right? In Hong Kong. I think for me, it's like spreading it across three things. Belonging is just a feeling. So looking at what are the diversity metrics, which is the workforce demographics, the leadership representation, what is our hiring funnel, what is our ERG participation, then looking at equity metrics in terms of pay equity analysis, the promotion rates, performance ratings, what is the development access that's available for different groups, and then looking at inclusion metrics, which is engagement scores, of course, belonging index, psychological safety. And there are surveys for all of this. What are our retention rates? What is our exit interviews saying about us? What is Glassdoor saying? And things like that. And doing this actually real time, some having some dashboards for leadership, which are real time dashboards, but otherwise looking at monthly trackers, say for hiring and turnover, looking at quarterly trackers for pulse surveys, because you can't over survey people out, and then looking at annual surveys for what is our comprehensive engagement and pay equity looking like, what's the market like. So using a series of these metrics, and then developing your own short term, medium term, immediate action, short action, long term goals to embed this. So you can put a framework in place, and I'm sure like all organizations have various versions of it. You can just flesh it out to include all these metrics, and have a really live leadership dashboard. And I would recommend definitely include some of these metrics into the KPIs of the leaders. Um, what you measure will get done, as they say, right? So a lot of the organizations have it included in the KPI. Some organizations which are lax are the ones where it is a nice to have instead of a must have. Then if it's not embedded into the KPI, I don't know, people are signing in from different parts of the world. So I just want to mention that if you just have it as a nice to have, it's going to be very difficult to then enforce any action on that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to include this kind of matrix as the measurement for the KPI, right? Making it is not something nice to have. Wow, it seems that we have a lot of questions coming in. So This one. Let's see. This is a wonderful session with an inspiring panel. Hello, Sundari, as well. I come from a workplace design perspective. I really appreciated your conversation about signage that serves an inclusive audience rather than a specific target group. Based on your experience, what other factors contribute to truly inclusive workplace design? Apparently, it's for Sundari, right? This question
No,
for
please,
you.
yeah, again, anybody can answer. Rita, you mentioned enough workplaces as well. I think the more places, I mean, we talked about a few of the workplaces in terms of the design perspectives. I think workplace design, Olivia talked about, the wheelchair access. Now
Yes.
and we had a pre-conversation where we talked about buses being inclusive for people who have seeing disabilities and things like that. So I think there are various things possible based on the workplace that it is, on how we want to include. Equally, there are places that we are finding challenges for sure, and I really like the sports example, because I play tennis, and quite a lot of the times, obviously with age, like, if you don't warm up, if you run from a meeting into the tennis thing, you've not warmed up enough, you're prone to injuries. And then you realize how every place is not set up for convenience. So till
Mm.
you actually, it's easy to say we should have empathy for a group, but till we actually do it, we can't find out. And I think one of the places where I think it was Volvo, I might get the Volkswagen or Volvo, one of the car manufacturers. They had engineers who were testing cars, but all the engineers were men. So as a result, they were not able to, while, if a pregnant woman drove the car with a seat belt, they weren't able to design it in a way they could figure it out. So they created, I mean, they couldn't get the engineers right away, women engineers right away. So what they created was something called empathy belly. So they created something that people could tie, the engineers could tie around them, and then they would try putting on the seat belt, seeing where it's hitting and what is happening, to make the roads safe, the cars safe for women drivers who are pregnant. So I think there are so many great examples of that where people have tweaked to ensure that everybody, and today we are seeing this in femtech. A lot of the medical diagnosis is not being made based on women's bodies. Traditionally, all the diagnosis has been based on the samples that they have, which happen to be male bodies. So a lot of the medicines which are designed. So if I go and tell a doctor that I'm having a particular gastro problem, their thinking is only based on a certain structure. To say that, no, it's this and this is what is happening. So I think some of the workplace design inclusivity, there's so many of this. If we say what is the current world looking like and whose views do we need to take, that becomes really important.
I really loved your sharing about this empathy belly, right? This was my first time hearing that, but it's amazing that they are so caring. Okay, let's move on to other question here because we have a few more questions coming in. Okay, how do you ensure your team remains agile and makes timely decision when the broader company culture requires heavy multi-layer, what's the word? I can't see it. Multi-layer, what's the word?
Approval.
Approval. Okay. Approval. Okay. So anyone would like to take it?
Yours, all yours, Olivia.
Hey, if you have an answer, please tell me. I like to know. I would say that I think for a company, especially relatively kind of large, and I don't like to use the word traditional, but like, large structural company where often, in an environment where we are governed by a lot of regulations. So public transport, we're governed by a lot of regulations. Safety is core. So a lot of these things, I think, generally you would tend to see that culture in a sense is almost because part of the, the regulations and the compliance requirement that sometimes that kind of, make it part of into that culture. So I think one of the things, and this is a question that we ask ourselves every day. So I think one of the things that we do tend to we do try to look at is that as an organization, we do recognize and we kind of look at how can we actually find ways where we can simplify some of the process. So we do actually, interesting enough, that we do put in like, kind of cross department teams together and kind of look at what will be some of the processes that we've been putting in place where, everybody hear it, everybody complains about it, but nobody's done anything. So then we put in cross-department team and say, let's see whether we actually can simplify this, because it will help not only that particular department or team, but it helps the organization as a whole. So I think, firstly, I think as an organization, we need to recognize that. And that's some of the things that we're trying to do. Something that, other successful department have done, or other teams, the leader have done, that I think is quite useful. Sometimes it's really kind of say, all right, if there are things that where, if it is, you can stay within the control of your own department, where you can kind of make that decisions relatively quickly, then try to practice that yourself. Try to make those kind of decisions relatively timely, and then again identifying like who are the people that are, who will be the people that actually are coming up with the ideas? Who are the people that's actually going to be actioning? Who do you need that really needs to make that quick decisions in terms of approving that particular ideas? So then you can actually get it going. So identifying the different roles that's required, and make sure you kind of follow that. And if you can practice it within your own team, make sure you do that first. Because, again, going across culture, that's $1 million questions. But I think there are, I think if you are able to, I think that collaborative culture, if you can bring in an organization that believed in the collaborative way of, across department working together and looking at a common challenge and common issues, I think that would be helpful. That's something that we are definitely trying to do ourselves anyway.
Yeah, very nice. Simplify the process, practice it in your own team, and practice this collaborative culture. Sundari, anything to add on before we move on to?
I think just that, I think having these, to what Olivia said, having these decisions recorded and actually shared across departments, sometimes we don't know what are best practices that are happening elsewhere, especially in larger organizations. So these kind of conversations where we actually interview leaders or interview people in the teams, how did you solve for this? What did you do? And then recording it and sharing it is also useful, because it gives visibility, wider visibility to great decisions which are otherwise happening in silos.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we have another question here. Thanks, Charles. How have you seen the U.S. administration's anti-DEI policies impact DEI in Asia? Some U.S. multinational companies operating in the region report a chilling effect with their DEI initiatives. Anyone?
Yeah.
Why don't you start first, Sundari, because I would go on a rampage.
What is the good thing to say here? Definitely. I remember the British Chamber was organizing a D&I symposium just when all of this was happening. And as we were looking at things that were, this is a year and a half back, January, Feb. And as we were looking at the symposium topics and this one, we just felt that entire thing was like totally eroded and made meaningless, the conversation, just by that one thing. I've seen organizations react both ways. I do a lot of work on D&I initiatives within organizations as well, and I've seen enough organizations pull back. But I've also seen organizations which are US organizations which have found a way to stay local and localize and customize the action. Say, for instance, in a place like Hong Kong, we have people who are non-Chinese, people who are born and brought up in Hong Kong. They are termed the ethnic minority, but they are like Hong Kongers who have been here. And for them, irrespective of what the global decision is, this is an opportunity pool for them to find work. So there are organizations which have just stayed firm and supported, where though the overall decision making might have headed differently, they've still said, yeah, we are interested in offering internships, looking at jobs. We will let them go through the process and find a way because they belong to Hong Kong and we are going to work the Hong Kong way. So I think the decisions have been varied. Charles, you know that it's a tough question and you asked this. I know that. I know that you work in the same space as well. So I think there have been cut in budgets. There have been definitely this. I think we can't deny the fact that it's had an impact. But I want to also say that there are equally organizations which have localized it and tried to find solutions locally. Said that our local team will work in a certain way. Like, for instance, there could be something happening in the US which may not be relevant directly to a population here. We acknowledge it, we are cognizant of it, but we try and see what's a local mix as well.
Okay, see the local mix. Very nice. Olivia.
I think a lot of it kind of goes back to exactly in the second part of that, in terms of the questions in the multinational operating here with the chilling effects. And I think we just got to be pragmatic. And I understand, I may not agree, but I do understand. I think that, yes, a lot of the US multinationals with their regional headquarters in Asia, after the current administration, when they first came out and, with the sort of anti-DEI policies in place, where many of them, they pull back because it's a compliance issue. It will affect their ability to legally operate. And so, and I kind of get that. And, and I would, yes, agree that, some, have kind of basically shelved the entire, DEI policy. Some have found ways to maybe maneuver, because, they do operate maybe in Asia is a little differently. I think one of the things that I do see, or I talked about it often, I think especially when it first, when the administration, first came out with this kind of policies, is that I think if we understand from the very beginning why we're doing this, the value of creating a truly diverse and inclusive and equitable workplace, if this is truly a value that an organizations believe in, then I would say, and I think earlier, go back to what Sundari said as well, not liking the, the labeling. It's, so if DEI as a label offend anybody, let's not call it that. We talked a lot around actually in, I think in Asia, and I know like Asia as if we're all the same. I know we're different, but generally within the Asia Pacific region, a lot of us, even in different culture, tend to use that kind of word of respect. We talk a lot around respect. We talk a lot around harmony. And a lot of these things, in a way, if you think about it, that's kind of what it is, right? When we talk about being inclusive and everything, is that we are respecting people of different viewpoints. We have that sense of respect. We want to create an harmonious place where people come and they feel safe, that they can talk and they can share their views. So if people don't like the word DEI, we talk about respect. We talk about harmony. We talk about, bringing this kind of amazing minds together so then we can join and create something greater than, what we are, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. But I think let's just get it really, get it straight. And really important is that, what is your original value? What is your purpose when you first started to do work around DEI? What is the purpose? Is it a checkboxing exercise? Is it just because, everybody does it, so I have to do it? Then yeah, I mean, I get it, you want to stop. But if the value is saying is, I do this because I really believe this is going to provide, an advantage. This is important for the workplace, for my organizations, because I know that it's a competitive landscape. And I want to make sure that I'm going to be the company that people's going to come to, the most talented individuals going to want to work for me, work for our organization, because you do respect my talents. Then you call it whatever you have to, but you can still be delivering exactly that value that you actually said that you're going to deliver on to start with.
Purpose and value. Very nice. Wow, we still have 2 more questions here. Okay, but we are under the time pressure here. Let me move it fast. We have our friend Emery Fong here. Hello and great lineup. Adding on to localization. Let me show you here. Sorry. Okay. With the workforce increasingly Mandarin driven, how have you seen DEI adapted to this or not? Anyone would like to?
Okay, so I think, Emery, hi Emery. So I think we we have these conversations before. I think, and probably quite a few of us, not just Emery and ourselves. I mean, quite a few of us talked about it when we first started this journey of DEI, is that language is key. So I know that, we used to, when we first started, like everything, of course, we we're starting it, everything's in English because we took a lot of things that comes from the US and from the West, right? But we also, but then we realized that when we're working in a local context, whether it's in Hong Kong, Cantonese driven, or you're going to be working in the Chinese mainland, is Mandarin driven, you realize that, well, actually it doesn't matter where, you have to adapt this concept into a local language. And we start to think about, like, how do you explain it in such a way that it's resonate, but then yet, and people don't feel like, oh, you're just grabbing, something that's from the West and you translate into a local language, but actually doesn't apply to us. And so I think a lot of it we see, especially when it comes to, like, whether it's in Cantonese or, in Mandarin as well, is the history. It's the story behind it. So it's not just translating this concept, and the terminology, but thinking about the history. So I don't know whether, was it Emery, you and I talked about it, or I talked about with somebody else, was like, oh, like, back in the olden days in China, a lot of the in terms of a lot of the people that are in plays or in acts or everything, even the women are played by men, and many of them are very feminine, and many of them are probably part of the LGBTQ plus community, but we just didn't have that terminology, right? But historically, they've always been part of the fabric of that society. So it's not something that's suddenly, oh my goodness, LGBTQ plus is something completely new to the Chinese culture, but but you just didn't have a label for it. That's all. But it was always part of that community. If you think about those the many of the men, the leading male actors that plays a female role, because women are not supposed to be like being out in the public. So I think those are the kind of things, once you kind of put things into context, I think that is how you could start to adapt, in terms of this concept of DEI and adapting it back to the workplace.
Very nice. Okay, here comes our last question from the viewers. Okay, so what are the advantages and disadvantages of the inclusive leadership?
No, I just want to thank Emery for that question as well, because one of the things,
sorry.
just also, it works the other way around as well. So currently, I'm part of the curation team of TEDx Hong Kong, which is coming back 10 years, and we've tried to ensure that a lot of the content is available in multi-language. And when I say multi-language, probably only 2 languages at the moment, which is English and Mandarin. But the whole purpose was also that we were probably excluding a whole set of people by keeping it only English. So it works both ways. When you're saying TEDx Hong Kong, it has to represent Hong Kong. It has to represent the population which is there. So I think building that, and maybe the advantages, disadvantages question can actually go to our own last question for the panel as well. Rita, what do you think in the interest of time? I think our future outlook kind of a way. I would say it as, so I like to do this one exercise. So if you'll indulge me, we'll do it quickly together. So it is, if I ask you to cross your arms, how would you cross your arms? So just notice for each of us, maybe for me, the left hand goes on top of the right hand. What was it for you, Rita?
Yes. Yeah, correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
The left
Mine
hand?
too.
Yeah, okay. So if I ask you to now open your arms out and then put the right hand on top of the left hand and cross your arms. Does it feel comfortable?
Not really.
So it is slightly uncomfortable, at least initially. So I think for inclusive leadership, it's like that. There are some behaviors to learn and some behaviors to unlearn. We want to be great active listeners. We don't want to micromanage people. We know that we have to create the psychologically safe space, not dominate conversations. We know that we should value diverse perspectives, not create exclusionary behavior. But it takes time sometimes to learn these behaviors. So it's practice, and then having that inclusion is everybody's business, and realizing that leaders, and I'm calling them, it is not positional, they'll all be relationship workers, because technology will help us, manage all the data that's generated in the firm. That's not a problem, but the leadership skill will be in how you navigate the complex of stakeholder relationships. So I see that leaders as relationship managers. That's how you can create fair workplaces, your ability to resolve conflict, you're building relationships. That requires intent, it requires attention, nurturing, and time. It's not a magic wand. So I think in terms of advantages and disadvantages, there may be things which work in a certain way. The clock will, the pendulum will swing one way and then it'll go to the other. But we need to keep on constantly doing that balancing act. It'll take us time to center.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true,
And
very true. Yeah,
just to
Olivia.
follow through, I mean, I agree with everything Sundari said. I mean, she put it beautifully in terms of, that kind of mindset that's required. And I think that one of the things, the only thing I would add is that I think once you have that if you genuinely believe that you want to create, a really inclusive workplace, I think one thing that I would remind, and I say this a few times, often in panels, to all the leaders, again, not by positions, as Sundari said, as you are, as you wanting to, change, the environment or create that kind of a workspace, is to have grace. Grace meaning having grace for yourself, because we are human beings. You would say, I want to be the most inclusive and most respectful individual, but you have good days and you have bad days. And you have your bias. We all have our bias because we're human beings. And so there'll be days when you are probably not going to live up to what you would really want to be. Don't beat yourself up. It's okay, because we're human. We're going to make mistakes, but as long as you recognize it and you change, and that how you're going to make it better next time, and then having grace for others. So having that sense of forgiveness, and thinking that, and not immediately thinking those people that others that you're dealing with, that they intentionally are evil or intentionally not want to be inclusive, but then they also are human. They also have their own unconscious bias, and then giving them grace. And I think once we actually can do that as well, I would say that it's a you can that the potentials of creating that kind of fair, inclusive workplace is just around the corner. Maybe a very, very big corner, but it's still just around the corner.
Yeah. And I think
Thank
there's
you.
a way of, just just like a litmus test, so that people have some 3 questions or something to work on. If we reflect on our behavior, and we can only reflect, we can't live it backward, we have to live forward, right? So do people feel that they have the permission to be candid when they're with you? Do your meetings make people feel smarter, or they feel quieter? Are you actually listening to the ideas that are being shared, but also the ideas that were never shared? So are you listening for the pause as well? Are you listening for the quiet? So if you actually have these 3 questions as template for yourself to check, it's okay. The answers may be yes, no, or whatever. You're at least tracking it. And that's why the dashboards are useful. But we can also create our own personal awareness dashboard. I love what Olivia said, that as long as you're aware, then that shows that you have the intention to create action.
Wow, a lot of nuggets of wisdom in the session today, right? Olivia mentioned the word grace to yourself and grace to other people. And Sundari mentioned about the listening and be aware of your own action, raise your awareness, and develop your own dashboard so that we can become more inclusive. Well, a lot of wisdom here, and I can always remember that we cannot let everybody, we cannot invite everybody in a meeting, right? And introverts speak first, leaders speak last. Okay, a lot of great ideas. I really love that. I really love the interaction that we have today. But unfortunately, this is the end of our session today, and I have to give my sincere thank you to our two incredible leaders here, Ms. Olivia and also Ms. Sundari. Thank you so much for your insights. And for those who would love to watch this session and you again, or you happen to have missed it, and you can always watch it online we've always watched it on LinkedIn. And so that's all for me. Anything from these two incredible leaders before we conclude the session? Anything?
No, just thank you. Thank you for this
Thank you.
space. Thank you for nuggets. I've made my notes. So it's been a great learning afternoon.
I'm gonna depend on AI to summarize, once I go.
Very true, very true. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. And next Wednesday we'll continue with our session, and the topic is about talent strategy in a sustainable enterprise. Okay, see you next week. Thank you so much. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.